Hey guys, it's Belle, and in this video we are going to be reading through and translating Pseudo-Bede's commentary on Psalm 4 verse 08. Now, as you guys know, I have done a series of videos reading through St. Augustine of Hippo's commentary on Psalms 4 and 5 in preparation for a video I'm going to be doing going through the Old Saxon Psalm commentary. Now, full disclosure is that I prepared the gloss for this assuming stupidly that Pseudo-Bede would be like an early medieval English commentary on these psalms and therefore would help us shed some light on the Old Saxon psalm commentary. And then right before recording this video, I looked up a bit of what Pseudo-Bede actually is, and although it's not clear precisely where it's from, modern scholars reckon, based on internal references within Pseudo-Bede's exposition on the Psalms to the investiture controversy, that this text probably dates to the beginning of the 12th century and probably in England. So, you know, it's not going to tell us much about the Old Saxon Psalm commentary, and therefore I might not do Pseudo-Bede. I'm probably going to do Cassiodor's Psalm commentary next in our series, but it's still worth going through as a brief little Latin exercise anyway, which is partly why I do these Latin tidbits. As usual with these, if you want to use it as a Latin exercise and pause the video, write out your own translation before you listen to what I say about the text, feel free to do so. And without further ado, let's get on with it. So, A fructu frumenti vini et olei sui multiplicati sunt. A fructu frumenti. Tu, Domine, naturale terras in listio minibus, quaes in verba bona, sed mali hoc non advertunt, quia multiplicati, id est dissipati et in multas partes distracti sunt cogitationibus suis. A fructu, id est propter abundantiam frumenti, non tui, sed illius qui dicit, ego sum panis vitae, qui de celo descendi. Sed sui, id est terreni frumenti, et a fructu vini sui dicet, id est terreni quod dementat et inebriat corpus, non vini tui, quod dementat animam, et a fructu olei sui non tui. Vinum Christi ex calis passionis Christi, id est imitatio eius, quod dementat animam, quia facit eam sitire mortem, et non sentire tormenta eius. Okay, so what does all of this mean? A fructu, and by the way, this first line up here is just the original line of the psalm, Psalm 4, verse 8. A fructu, by the fruit. Frumenti, vini et olei. This is the Mediterranean triad of wheat, wine, and oil. Multiplicati sunt. They are multiplied. So, a fructu frumenti, by the fruit of the wine. Now, this whole part of the commentary is going to play on the same sort of grammatical feature of this psalm, so it's worth briefly commenting on it. So, a fructu here, by the fruit, implies that something has been caused by the fruit, or that these people have done something through the fruit. So in this case, it is multiplicati sunt. They were multiplied by the fruit of grain, wine, and their oil. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because the Pseudo-Bede, in commenting on this psalm, is going to draw a huge distinction between all these things. So it's like Jesus shows people how to, or rather the people who follow Jesus Christ are multiplied by the fruit of their wheat, wine, and oil of Christ, as opposed to the secular people who are multiplied by their own wheat, wine, and oil. That's what this whole passage is about, basically. But it gets expressed in some kind of confusing ways, so just keep that in mind. And then this psalm actually addresses God directly, which I think is kind of interesting. It almost structures the psalm commentary as a prayer from the writer, perhaps even from the reader, to God himself, which is curious. So, tu naturaliter ostendisti. You have naturally shown, Domine, O Lord, omnibus, to the people, quae sint vera bona, those things which are the true goods, sed malioc non advertunt, but the wicked men do not heed this. Quia multiplicati, since they are multiplied, id est, that means it is. Dissipati, they are dissipated, et, and in multas partes distracti sunt, and they have been torn apart into many regions, cogitationibus suis, by their thoughts. So keep in mind that these three verbs, multiplicati, dissipati, and distracti, there are going to be a lot of different plays on this. They're going to do this in regards to our fructu, vini, and then our fructu ole down below. So just bear that in mind. And then it goes on to talk about what it means by the fruit. So our fructu, that is, id est, propter abundantiam, on account of the abundance, frumenti, of the grain, non tui, so that's referring to God, not of your grain, but of that man who said, Sedilius quidicit, I am the bread of life, ego sum panis vitae, quide celo descendi, who descended from heaven. Sed sui, id est terreni frumenti. So, as you can see, this clause doesn't really have a verb, so the verb it takes goes all the way back to the first line up here, and it goes back to the ablative a fructu. So what this is saying is, but they are multiplied, dissipated, and distracted a fructu, by the fruit, terreni frumenti, of the terrestrial grain, which is their own grain. So this whole weird exposition up here is basically just saying that we shouldn't read this line about people being multiplied by the fruit of their grain in a literal sense, and therefore hoard grain or place a super high importance on money in this world, because what this is saying is that the grain that is being referred to here is the grain of given from God, it's the celestial bread, it's Jesus, etc., etc. It's the spiritual stuff. Likewise, et a fructu vini sui, and from the fruit of their wine, finicet id est terreni, namely that is the terrestrial wine, because terreni and vini are both genitive singulars, genitive neuter singulars, so they go together. So they are also multiplied, dissipated, and distracted by the fruit of their wine, that's the terrestrial wine. And then this quad here probably refers to vini, because they are both singular neuter nouns. So the terrestrial wine which dementat, which dements or maddens, et inebriat, and inebriates corpus, the body. So, and then this non vini tui, if you can believe it, it goes all the way back again to multiplicati, dissipati, et distracti sunt, a fructu non vini tui. So they are not multiplied, dissipated, and distracted by the fruit of your wine, quod dementat animam, your wine which maddens the soul. So this word animam can mean soul, it can mean life, it can mean the emotive mind. So those three different things all in one. Et a fructu ole sui non tui, and they are multiplied, dissipated, and distracted by the fruit of their wine, not of your wine. So I know that explaining all this in English is kind of difficult, but I don't know, just you have to take my word for it that if you're thinking through it in Latin, this is less inarticulate than it seems in an English explanation. I am very sorry. And we are about to get to the part of this commentary that makes me a bit annoyed. Let's go on. Vinum Christi est calix passionis Christi. So the wine of Christ is the chalice of Christ's passion. Okay, so far so good. Id est imitatio eius. That is imitation of him, this him being Christ. Quod dementat animam, which dements the soul. So what this is saying is that the wine of Christ, which is not the terrestrial wine, bear in mind, on which these bad men are multiplied, the wine of Christ is the chalice of Christ's passion, which, okay, as far as metaphors go, wine is not a cup, but wine is commonly held in a cup, so okay, fine. Like I think it's suboptimal as a metaphor, but I can understand that. What I don't like is this next one. Okay, so Pseudo-Bede is saying that the wine of Christ is the imitation of Christ. So Pseudo-Bede is saying that in this passage here, when it's saying that people are multiplied by the fruit of their wine, he's saying we should read this as the wine of Christ, the vinum Christi. And that this wine is meant to be the imitation of Christ. And the reason he gives for this is because in the same way as the terrestrial wine dementat corpus, quod dementat corpus earlier, the wine of Christ dementat animamit, demensor, maddens the soul, the mind, quia facit eam citire mortem, because it makes the mind thirst for death, et non sentire tormenta eis, and not feel the torments of death. Now, so this is exactly it. It's drawing on this language of early hagiographies, which argues that, it would put these words in the mouths of secular Romans who are amazed that these Christian martyrs are throwing their lives away at the hands of wicked Roman emperors. And these Roman secular noblemen would say, oh, these Christians must be mad. It's like they're drunk. And so that's the argument that's being used here for saying that the wine in this bloody passage actually means like the imitation of Christ, because wine will madden the body and cause you to act crazy, and imitating Christ maddens the soul and causes you to seem crazy. Like, it's just such a bloody stretch, and I hate it. Come up with a better metaphor. Anyway, going on to the next part. So now that he's talked about this in terms of Pseudo-Bede has given us his explanation, he's going to point out a couple of real-life instances of this. So I'll read this passage, and as usual, feel free to pause and have a go translating it on your own. De hoc vino satis biberat egregius martyrille Laurentius, qui cum iamas autus esset, Durano tamen crucianti se insultava titicanes, asatus sum, et reliqua. Bibebat quoque de eodem apostolus, cum dicebat quio dissolvi, et esse cum Christo. Oleum quoque Christi sunt spiritualia donna, quibus mulcet et mitigat Deus, quibus confidetea. De quod ictum est, benedixite Deus oleo exultationis, et impiguassi in oleo caput meum. Oleum autem olorem potest dicit materiale oleum, quoip sidi descere querunt. Et adulationes de quibus mulgentur, et quibus gaudent, de quo oleo dicitur, oleum peccatoribus non impiguet caput meum. Okay, so what does all of this mean? De hoc vino, from this wine, satis biberat, egregius martyrille Laurentius. The amazing martyr Lawrence had drank enough of this wine. Qui cum iamas autus esset, who, when he was being roasted, basically, this is one of the punishments or execution methods that Roman emperors in these hagiographies sometimes try to use to kill Christians. They would burn them in ovens. So, se insultabat, he insulted Tyrano tamen cruciantise, the tyrant who was torturing him, saying, dicens, this, and I love this, is really good, asatus sum et reliqua, which is basically, I've been roasted, so what? Like, what else do you got? It's really good. I love it. It's a good bit of hagiographic sass. Bibebat quoque deodum apostolus. So, the apostle, and I actually don't really know, I assume that somebody who's very well versed in the hagiographies would recognize this phrase cupio dissolvi, but so I don't know which apostle this is referring to. It might be Paul. So the apostle was drinking bibebat quoque de eodem, also from the same. Now, eodem is ablative, neuter, singular, so therefore it almost certainly refers back to vino here, as it's as the actual noun that it's referring to. So the apostle was drinking from the same wine, cum dicebat, when he said, Cupio dissolvi, I desire to be dissolved, et esse cum Christo, and to be with Christ. Oleum quoque Christi sunt spiritualia dona. So spiritual gifts are the oil of Christ. Quibus mulcet et mitigat eos, by which he comforts and appeases those, eos, quibus confert ea, to whom he grants them. De quo dictum est, about which it is said, or about who it is said. Benedicit te Deus. God has blessed you, oleo exaltationis, with the oil of exaltation. Et impiguasti in oleo caput meum, and you have anointed my head in oil. This is a line from a different psalm. Oleo mautem malorum. However, the oil of the wicked men, potestici, it can be called, et materiale oleum, the material oil. So what this is saying is that the material oil can also be called, potestici, oleum malorum, the oil of the wicked. Quo ipsi ditescere querunt, by which those men, and this ipsi here I think is probably referring to the wicked men, because they are both masculine, plural, in their declension. So, by which these wicked men, querunt ditescere, they seek to be wealthy or become wealthy. Et adulationes, and the adulations, de quibus mulcentur, by which they are appeased. So the material oil can refer to the oil of the wicked, and also to the adulation that these people seek. Because in the same way as Christ comforts people with spiritual gifts, these evil men want to be appeased by material gifts. Et quibus gaudent, and in which physical gifts the wicked men rejoice. De quo oleo dicita, about which oil, so this is referring to the material oil, like the literal physical oil. About the literal oil it is said, oleum peccatoris non impinguit caput meum. So may the oil of the sinner not anoint impinguit caput meum, my head. And I think that's another psalm reference there. So there we go. This is the psalm commentary saying that we should read all of these three items of the Mediterranean triad in Psalm 4 verse 8, the grain, wine, and oil, as referring to the spiritual gifts of Christ, and we should not take a literal reading of this psalm. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. If you want me to teach you Latin or any of the other languages I do on this channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description of this video, and on there I offer tuition at lower than market rates. You can also join my Discord server, where, if you ask a question about Latin or any of these other medieval languages, I will try my best to answer you. But if I'm not able to answer you, now for Latin we have a few people who are pretty good at Latin who can help you out if I'm not available to. As usual, please like the video, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye everyone.